Welcome. Tonight, we'll take a quiet step back into time, far beyond the stories of emperors, marble columns, and gladiator spectacles, and descend into the forgotten corners of everyday life in the heart of the Roman Empire. While the image of ancient Rome is often paved with triumphs and legends, the reality for most of its people was much quieter and far more difficult. Not the Rome of power, but of pressure. Not of grandeur, but of grime. So, if you're lying down, or settling in for rest, this is your invitation to let the day go. Let the noise fade behind you. Instead, drift through time with me into the winding, narrow streets of a Roman neighborhood where life was crammed between creaking walls and the daily rhythm was one of survival, not celebration. We'll begin with a journey into the daily routine of someone not powerful or noble, but ordinary. Someone like you, if you had been born in a tenement on the Aventini Hill centuries ago. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and imagine yourself there, a citizen. Perhaps, or maybe a freedman, possibly even a servant. This is what it might have been like. Segment 1. Why you would outlast a day in an ancient Roman tenement daily life immersion. Suburban district, Rome. Round 100 CE the sun rises slowly over the skyline of Rome. But you do not see it. Not directly. You live 3 stories up in a wooden apartment block. One of dozens stacked shoulder to shoulder in the dense neighborhood of Sabra. The light that filters in is weak, softened by linen cloth strung across alleyways, and by the constant haze of hearth smoke that clings low to the rooftops. Your room is small. Too small for a full bed, really. The walls are plastered but cracked. A single play oil lamp flickers beside you, its smoke already collecting at the corners of the ceiling, darkening the beams above. You breathe it in, because there is no chimney. Only a narrow window, closed in winter, propped open in the summer with a splintered stick. The room is always either too hot or too cold. Your neighbors, a family of 4, live on the other side of a wall so thin you can hear the baby string, coughing from the smoke, long before the family begins to move. You hear feet scraping over stone, the rustle of a tunic being pulled on. Someone clears their throat. Someone else mutters a prayer to Fortuna. There is no private latrine. Not for you. If you need to relieve yourself, you'll need to descend 3 flights of stairs, and even warped wooden steps that creak with every footfall, and take your chances with the public latrine down the street. But that's not always safe. Not this early. Not when the streets are still mostly empty and the watchmen have passed. So you wait. Instead, you open your door and step into the narrow interior passage. You can smell your neighbor's morning meal already. Flat bread reheated from yesterday, and something sharp and fishy. Probably garum, the fermented sauce that clings to everything. You go back inside and prepare your own food. A small clay dish, some olives, barley mash. Your fingers do most of the work. You eat sitting cross-legged on the floor, listening to the city slowly awaken. Someone drops a bucket 2 stories down. A shout follows. And then silence. The walls here are not built for comfort. They are built quickly. This building, like most insulae, has been assembled of wood, brick, and cheap mortar. It stands because it hasn't fallen yet, and that's the only reason. Fire is always a threat. Every tenant knows that. One open flame, one lamp tipped too far, and the dry beams above you could light like kindling. There is no fire brigade for people like you. The vigils, Rome's firefighters, are slow to come to poorer neighborhoods. When they arrive, they often carry more buckets than water. So everyone is cautious, but not cautious enough. By mid-morning, the streets below are alive with sound. Vendors yelling in clipped Latin, Carts dragging across stones, and the constant clatter of sandals and hoofbeats. You step outside. The stairwell smells of damp straw and smoke. You pass your neighbor, an older man who used to be a sailor. He has no teeth, but nods at you. You nod back. Descending the stairs is a small task each day, and a small risk. They are steep, slanted, with a rope instead of a railing. A child fell here last week, broke his arm. His mother carried him through the streets, crying, looking for a healer. At the ground level, the doorway opens not into a lobby, but directly into the street, or what passes for one. It's narrow, wet, cobblestones hidden under grime. You step round puddles, some of water, some of things less certain. Rats scream beneath cots. Dogs bark from rooftops. You walk quickly. You always do, eyes down. Don't draw attention. You pass a baker's stall. Fresh loaves glisten. With heat, you cannot afford them. You keep walking. A little farther down is a public fountain. The queue has already formed. Mostly women, some children. Large clay jars rest at their feet. You join the end of the line and wait. You can hear someone on the upper floors emptying their chamber pot into the alley. No warning. The contents hit the stone with a dull splash. No one flinches. This is Rome. This is normal. By midday, you are tired. The work has not yet begun. But the walk, the stairs, the waiting, they take their toll. You carry things. You fetch things. You run errands for people with more coins than you. And when the sun begins to sink, you return. Back to your insula. Back up those groaning stairs. The room is no warmer. The light no kinder. But it is home. You eat what's left. Some lentils, salted fish, if you're lucky. Maybe you saved enough to buy wine, the cheap kind, thick and sharp, served in a reused amphora. You drink it slowly, listening to the distant sound of music from a nearby courtyard where someone richer celebrates something you'll never be invited to. And then, you sleep on a mat. On the floor, with your tunic still on, just in case, tomorrow, you will do it all again. And the next day, and the next. This is your life. A constant struggle. A quiet entrance, and still, somehow, it goes on.
Imagine now that days, weeks, months have passed. You still live in that tenement, still waking before dawn, still climbing the same splintered stairs, still scraping by in the half-light of oil lamps and communal chaos. But something begins to change. The summer is unusually dry. Hot winds blow from the east. The air feels brittle. You hear murmurs in the street, about tension in the forum, about unrest in the provinces, about Caesar Nero's strange stories, about his theatre performances, his entourage, his taste for luxury. And then one night, it happens. The night Rome burned. The fire begins near the Circus Maximus, a low-lying, heavily populated district filled with shops and warehouses and oil stores. It is July of 64 CE. The flames move quickly, too quickly. You awaken to shouting, real, urgent shouting. You smell it before you see it. Acrid, fast-moving, clinging to everything. Smoke, thick, bitter, familiar, but worse. It's not a hearth, it's the world. People are already in the streets, carrying whatever they can. Blankets, coins, children. No one knows where the fire is yet. Only that it's spreading downhill, then uphill, then across alleys and over rooftops. You don't go back inside. There's nothing there worth saving. You run, and Rome burns, the city engulfed. For 6 days, flames consume the city, then a pause. Then the fire reignites and rages for another 3. 10 of Rome's 14 districts are touched by the fire. 3 are completely leveled. Initially, the very ones like yours collapse inward. Their wooden staircases become chimneys. Their clay bricks crack from the heat. Roofs fall onto rooftops. There is no organized evacuation. No sirens. No maps. Only smoke and shouting. The elite flee to their countryside villas. The poor flood into open fields and along the riverbanks. Some crowd into temples, the stone ones. the old ones hoping the gods will protect them. And when the fire is finally done, the city is unrecognizable. Mountains of ash, blackened stone, twisted remnants of statues, and a silence that hangs long after the flames die. Nero's return, and then Nero returns. He hadn't been in Rome when it began. He was staying at Antium, his seaside retreat. According to some accounts, he rushed back as the city smoldered. He walks the streets with his guards, offers shelter, opens the imperial gardens for refugees, distributes grain. It is not enough. Rumors spread. Did he start it? Did he order it? Some whisper that he played his lyra while the city burned a performance as the world collapsed. Tacitus, the historian, will later say that the people believed it, that even if it wasn't true, it felt true. A man detached from his own empire's pain. To deflect suspicion, Nero finds a target. He blames the Christians, still a small, misunderstood sect, seen by many as strange, secretive, even dangerous, accused of atheism for rejecting the Roman gods. They make an easy scapegoat. Some are arrested, some executed, publicly, spectacularly, not out of justice, but convenience. The fire becomes more than a disaster. It becomes a political turning point, rebuilding and reimagining. In the months that follow, Rome rebuilds, but not equally. Nero uses vast tracts of cleared land to begin construction on a personal palace, the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a sprawling, opulent complex of gardens, halls, and shimmering ceilings. A home so large, it includes an artificial lake. A home so extravagant, it makes the people whisper all over again. Was this the point? Was this the plan? And yet, some good comes from it. Building codes are introduced, wider streets, height restrictions on insulae, better access to water and fire prevention. A new kind of Rome begins to emerge from the ashes. Still, the wound remains. Those who lost everything, the poor, the vendors, the craftsmen, are rarely compensated. Their homes are gone. Their lives are uprooted, their complaints unheard. A slow fallout for Nero. The fire marks the beginning of a long unraveling. Trust erodes, resentment festers. The provinces grow restless. The Senate, once pliable, begins to plot. Only 4 years later, Nero will be dead, declared a public enemy, driven into exile, dying by his own hand, not with the glory of an emperor, but with the panic of a man utterly alone. And the fire, it lives on, not just in stone and record, but in memory, in the lessons of how power responds to crisis, in the stories passed down about what can be lost, and what rises in its place. Beneath the clamour of Roman streets, below the markets and taverns, even beneath the temples of official gods, there existed another world, a quieter one. Hidden from sunlight, a place where men gathered in secret to share meals, to whisper odes, to honour a god whose origins were never fully understood, even by those who worshipped him. Welcome to the Mithraeum, the sacred space of the followers of Mithras. An underground world. To enter a Mithraeum was to step into a chamber deliberately cut off from the outside world. They were often constructed underground in caves, beneath homes, or under public buildings, where no natural light could intrude, where silence hung heavy in the air. Some Mithraea were carved into living rock, others built like artificial caverns, supported by stone pillars and brick vaults. The ceilings were low, the walls narrow, the floors laid with benches along either side, not for comfort, but for closeness. These were not public temples. There were no open courtyards, no processions, no loud festivals, just quiet and ritual. These spaces were designed to feel otherworldly, womb-like, enclosed, separate from the distractions of the street above. Only initiates entered, only men, mostly soldiers, merchants, civil officials, men accustomed to duty, hierarchy, and secrecy. Who was Mithras? That is the question, and it remains unanswered even today. The cult of Mithras first appears in Roman records in the 1st century CE, just as the empire is expanding eastward into former Persian territories. Some say Mithras was adopted from the Zoroastrian god Mithra. Others argue the Roman version was a wholly new invention, loosely inspired, but distinct. What we do know is what remains. A central image, repeated in nearly every Mithraeum. Mithras slaying a bull. He kneels atop the beast. One hand pulls back its head, the other drives a dagger into its neck. Around them, symbolic animals, a dog, a snake, a raven. Sometimes a scorpion clings to the bull's genitals. Always stylized, always specific. The act, known as the tauroptony, was not merely a sacrifice. It was cosmic. It represented life, death, renewal, a pattern as old as time. Mithras himself is always shown as youthful, often wearing a Phrygian cap marking his eastern origin. His gaze is serene. Even as he slays, he looks away, not down, detached from the act, as if guided by purpose rather than passion. The 7 grades of initiation the followers of Mithras didn't simply worship, they progressed. There were 7 levels of initiation, each with its own title, symbols, and trials. Corax the raven Nymphas, the bridegroom Miles the soldier, Il the lion Persis the Persian Heliodromus the sun runner. Pay to the father, each stage may have involved tests of endurance, symbolic rebirth, the sharing of sacred meals, and silent vows. The details are lost. The oaths were kept. No initiates wrote them down. Archaeologists have found painted symbols and mosaics representing each grade. Some Mithraea even had niches or rooms corresponding to these levels. This was not a loose gathering. It was structured, hierarchical, bound by loyalty and belief. A meal in the dark. One of the central rites in Mithraic worship was the sacred meal, likely consumed in near silence. Initiates would recline on the benches lining the chamber walls. In the dim light of oil lamps, they would share bread and wine, possibly meat, possibly symbolic foods representing the cosmic world. At the far end of the chamber, often on a raised dais, stood the image of Mithras himself frozen in the moment of sacrifice, presiding silently over his followers. Some scholars believe this ritual echoed the Roman military mess or even Christian communion. But unlike Christian worship, this was not about forgiveness. It was about strength, endurance, and cosmic order, the enduring mystery. What did the followers of Mithras actually believe? That remains elusive. There are no surviving scriptures, no direct doctrinal texts. What we know comes from archaeology, the layout of the temples, the images, the inscriptions, and from scattered references in outsider writings. Some believe Mithraism represented the soul's journey through the cosmos, with each grade symbolizing a planet or a stage in spiritual transformation. Others argue it was more practical, a bonding tool for men far from home, especially soldiers, who found in Mithras a sense of brotherhood and cosmic protection. And then, as suddenly as it rose, it vanished, fade into silence. By the 4th century CE, as Christianity gained imperial favor, Mithraism began to fade. The temples were sealed, forgotten, covered over by centuries of change. It wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries that many were rediscovered beneath buildings, churches, even train stations. One of the most famous, the London Mithraeum, was found beneath the modern city's financial district. Another, the Santa Prisca Mithraeum, lies under a church in Rome itself, its walls still bearing inscriptions and paintings, preserved in darkness. These chambers are time capsules, echoes of a spiritual life once vibrant, now silent. And yet, the mystery remains. The god with no voice, the rites with no scripture, the quiet devotion that once filled the air with candlelight and whispered vows, now buried in stone. We leave this hidden world behind and rise now to the surface, to a very different Rome, a Rome of golden banquets and garden estates, where the powerful lived as if the world belonged to them. The Roman world was not one world, but many, while the poor huddled in creaking tenements, and initiates gathered beneath the earth to whisper sacred oaths above them. On the hills, in the villas, and behind high walls of brick and marble, another Rome existed, a Rome of curated calm, of excess cloaked in elegance, of dinners that stretched into the night, not out of necessity, but design. Let us step quietly into one of these places now. A senator's villa, a private estate just beyond the city walls. The air is softer here, the noise distant, and the rhythm of life entirely different. A different kind of arrival. You are not a tenant here. You are a guest, or perhaps a servant, a witness. Either way, you step through gates carved with laurel designs, past manicured hedges of rosemary and cypress, past fountains trickling softly over smooth stone basins. The gravel underfoot is pale and cool. It crunches rhythmically beneath your sandals. The villa rises ahead, not tall like the tenement blocks, but broad, confident in its expanse rather than its height. Columns line the portico. Their shadows stretch long across the marble. Inside, all lamps burn with clean light. Beeswax candles, expensive and rare, flicker softly in recessed alcoves. The air smells faintly of honey, wine, and crushed herbs, not smoke or rot. You notice it instantly. Preparations. In the kitchen, an army of slaves works in silence. The cockers, the head cook, oversees it all with quiet precision. There is no shouting, only a low hum of knives against wood, water boiling in bronze pots, and the occasional splash of oil in a pan. Food here is not eaten to survive. It is eaten to perform. Each course has been planned days in advance. Ingredients imported from as far as Gaul, Egypt, and the eastern provinces. a pomegranate from Syria, a spice from India, a fish caught in the Adriatic that morning, packed in snow, carried by mule. Guests begin to arrive. Senators, merchants, poets. Their robes are immaculate, their sandals freshly cleaned. They are greeted by name, escorted to the triclinium, the dining room, where they will recline on cushioned couches arranged in a U shape around the central table. The feast begins. The first course is light. Olives, cheeses, pickled vegetables, dressed in honey and wine. Delicate, designed not to satisfy, but to awaken the appetite. Then come the dishes of showmanship. Dormice stuffed with herbs and nuts. Flamingo tongue, served in thick, sweet sauces. Eel, boiled in wine, then grilled and dusted with cinnamon. Between each course, wine flows watered down. Yes, but freely. Servants refill cups without being asked. The best wine, aged in clay amphorae sealed with resin, is reserved for the final course, when tongues are loosened and laughter rolls softly between bites. Sometimes there is music, a flute, a harp, the low thrum of a lyre. Sometimes poetry, sometimes debate, but always control. Vomiting mid-feast, it is a truth often repeated in whispers and occasionally exaggerated, but worth noting nonetheless, among the elite. Vomiting was not unheard of during these extended meals, not in shame, but by intention, a way to make room, a way to begin again, whether done discreetly or with ritualized resistance. The goal remained clear, to indulge as long as the night permitted, and the night could be long indeed. The labor behind the luxury as guests laugh softly and bite into honeyed figs. 100 silent hands maintain the illusion of effortlessness. Servants move barefoot, trained to walk without sound. Cups are whisked away, platters replaced. Spills blotted before they are seen. No guest ever reaches. Everything arrives as if by thought. These slaves, many born into service. Some once freemen now return to bondage by debt, see everything, speak little, and remember everything. The quiet machinery of elite Rome rests on their shoulders. The walls listen. The villa itself is a character. Its walls painted with detailed frescoes, pastoral scenes, mythological stories, lovers frozen in time. The ceilings curved, their corners decorated with geometric mosaics. Rain might tap softly on the tiled roof, but inside, the temperature remains comfortable, warmed by hypercausts, the Roman underfloor heating system, fed by constant fires tended by unseen workers. And when the feast is over, and guests slowly rise from their couches drunk, full amused, they are offered scented water to rinse their hands, and perfumed oil to smooth through their hair. They step back into the night, where torches flicker in sconces. The city hums in the distance. But here, in this curated bubble, the chaos feels a world away. A life apart, this is Rome too. Not better, just different. Removed from the dust and smoke, sheltered from the fire and the street fights. Here, the elite discuss matters of law, trade, literature, while hundreds support their comfort. Invisible but essential. The tenement dweller and the senator breathe the same city air, but live in entirely different worlds. And as we end our long journey through those worlds, from the cramped heights of the insulae, through disaster and mystery, to feasts behind garden walls, we return now to the present, a calming reflection and gentle farewell. And now we return back from the winding alleys and soot-stained stairwells of Rome's forgotten tenants, back from the heat and panic of a city engulfed in flame, back from the silent chambers beneath the earth where devotion lingered in shadow, and back from the quiet excess of a dinner that never truly ends. Across 2 hours, we have traveled the full breadth of ancient Rome, not through its triumphs and victories, but through its daily grind, its losses, its rituals, and its quiet indulgences. We have seen the lives most rarely told, and we've done so slowly, gently, letting each detail unfold like the flickering of a lamp in the corner of a quiet room. As you rest now, perhaps already halfway into sleep, let yourself drift even further. Let the weight of that ancient world fall away. The smoke, the stone, the whispers of Latin in the dark. They fade now, like dreams. The Rome we explored tonight is no longer here. Its walls have crumbled, its rituals have vanished. Its names once shouted in the forum are now etched only in broken marble. But through calm remembrance, through slow, steady storytelling, we keep them close for just a while longer. You don't need to remember every name. You don't need to recall every meal, every prayer, every brick in every wall. Just know that life in Rome, in all its hardship and glory, was lived fully, quietly, every single day. And now, your day is done too. The fire is out. The steps are climbed. The city sleeps. So, breathe, close your eyes, and let go. Until next time. Good night.